Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. I hope you guys are waking up and feeling good out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new week out there so far. It's going to be a pretty active week. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen at the end of this week with severe weather and even the winter weather side of this powerful storm system that's going to sweep across the middle of the country. And then a secondary storm system will likely develop at the base of this trough that will swing across the country and then introduce a significant severe weather event, most likely for Saturday also. So it's going to be full steam ahead this week. We're trying to figure this out. We will be doubling up the videos some days. Just don't want to guarantee, any individual day, just because, I got soccer tomorrow and then we got church on Wednesday nights. But there will be some days this week where we certainly will do two videos a day, one in the morning and one at night. But we're going to speak on this. We're going to talk about the system itself at first, and then we'll speak on the severe weather side. We'll spend a good bit of time on that, and then we'll talk a little bit on the winter weather side of this too, because there is an opportunity for a blizzard. But I think if you compare this storm system to last week's storm system, that it's going to be kind of similar. I do think the severe weather side is going to be more significant than any blizzard risk that there may be, which was kind of the opposite last week. So we'll speak on everything, and then at the very end of the video, we will talk about today's weather like we always do in the morning videos. I'm probably going to have to pause a couple times in this video, maybe take a sip of water. Just allergies, and I've been telling you guys that have been kicking my butt for the last few to several days. I have to clear my throat a lot. I'm not sick, just allergies. So if I pause, if I don't flow as good as I normally do, that's why. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So we're going to start off with Friday morning, March the 14th. So it's Monday. This is a few days out ahead of us. And what you see here is a lot of blue across the Rockies, and a low pressure is really developing and ejecting across the middle of the country, and it's deepening as it does so, as a trough really swings down and gets more of a neutral to negative tilt to it. In response, we have a strengthening surface low. So we get this in motion. We start to get into about Friday afternoon. All right, it's around 3, 4, 5 o'clock, depending on your time zone. I know right now you just see some green colors. There's nothing too crazy here. Depending on which site you look at as far as weather models, it shows something different. And I actually struggled for about 5 or 10 minutes this morning figuring out which one I wanted to show to kind of give you guys the best representation of what's going on. But the fact of the matter is we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So let's just focus on I guess, trust me with what I say when I say that, the areas in green here could be strong to severe storms, and the blues obviously snow, but I know it just shows kind of splotches of green, but that could be storms. So we start to get into Friday evening. You start to see more green right here. You see this 978 millibar low. That's a pretty powerful land cyclone, pretty powerful storm system just in general. I mean, it has the millibar number equivalent to like a category 1 or 2 hurricane. So this is going to kick up a lot of strong winds, and it's probably going to bring a lot of dynamic weather. Blizzard potential on one side, severe weather risk on the other. So this is probably a lot of strong to severe storms right in here. Now we continue to move into, say, the middle of the night, this coming Friday night into Saturday morning. This is like right in the middle of this coming Friday night. We got the blue. This is probably some sort of heavy snow, maybe a blizzard. All right, 980 low. Does it weaken a little bit? Does it strengthen, kind of maintain strength as it kind of cruises across the plains into the Midwest and upper Midwest? Not quite sure. I mean, regardless if it's the 970s or 980s, that's a pretty strong low pressure. And you see just a big blob of green right in here. That could very well be just clusters of strong to severe storms. Could be a line of strong to severe storms sweeping across the areas of the Midwest and all the way down into Arkansas, Western Tennessee, Kentucky, etc. Then we start to get into Saturday morning. This thing really begins to deepen once again, if it's not already strengthening overnight as we get into Saturday morning. And I really think this is where a blizzard could materialize across areas of the Dakotas. Now, it's starting to show a lot more of a wintry mix, a lot more of a mixing scenario as far as winter weather. Not quite sure if that's going to be what happens or if this is just a cutoff from rain and snow, kind of like our system last week. But we'll figure out those details as we get closer. But that's a 972 low, guys, just chilling over southern areas of Minnesota. That's a powerful low pressure, and it has that classic look. And what I mean here is, you see how it's kind of bowing out like this? It almost looks like a comma head, like a shrimp, if you will. When these storm systems do that, I mean, that means they're pretty strong and very dynamic and dangerous, honestly. So this is like a wind-driven rain over like Minneapolis, for example. This is all rain getting into the Great Lakes region. Could be severe weather all the way up to Chicago. But this is a powerful storm system, and we'll keep this going here. Could switch any kind of rain to snow or winter weather across Minneapolis as cold air tries to catch up. But I'm telling you, there's going to be, it's not going to be talked about as much because severe weather is obviously a bigger topic. But this could potentially be a powerful winter storm. I just don't think it'll be a long-lasting winter storm up here in the high plains, and then it cruises on off. But let's go on and look at the eastern U.S. too, and we'll start this off Saturday morning, March the 15th, 5 days from now. And you see the green down here across areas of Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama. This could very well be a line of storms marching across the mid to deep south, even all the way up to Kentucky, heck, even all the way up into Indiana Saturday morning. And then we start to make our way into Saturday afternoon. This is when it gets tough to figure out. Is there going to be a secondary low that sort of develops? And I've been talking about this a little bit over the last few days. Is there going to be like a secondary low that develops kind of right into here and then kind of scoots across this area? And I think there will be. Euro continues to kind of lean a little bit more towards the GFS in this scenario. GFS is a very dangerous scenario, and I just picked one model to show. This video would go on for way too long if I was comparing every single model, but the idea is still here. We got a 999 low developing over Louisiana, and it's about to go in the direction that I just drew that arrow. So you see this green right here. This is Saturday afternoon. This low is going to help to really re-advect, if you will, the low-level moisture, and of course the low pressure is going to bring its own wind field, and you're going to have the overlapping conditions. And I'm telling you, Saturday could be a dangerous day across the deep south, Mississippi, Alabama. And as this low let's get this back in motion. And as this low sort of continues to move wherever it moves, whether it's into northern Alabama, up into Tennessee, either way it's going to move in general northeast. I mean, this is getting into Saturday night, the late night hours. This green right here could very well be powerful storms, very strong storms. And this could be a flooding threat materializing over areas of the Mid-South and the southern and central Appalachian Mountains. The main storm system up here sort of gets all the way up in Canada. This is in its way its own. This is a different storm system. It's kind of generated off the same trough, but it's another separate piece of energy that really fires up, in my opinion, the Saturday risk. So this continues. I mean, this is a 998 low getting into Sunday morning, cruising across areas of Ohio. I mean, it could very well be any other state, but this area is probably where it will be in. This is probably whipping up very strong winds across the Appalachian Mountains. We don't need that. And this will eventually, as we're getting into Sunday, bring probably strong winds, wind-driven rain, probably even a severe weather risk into the eastern U.S. And I know you're just seeing blobs of rain, but that could be a line of storms. It could be all kinds of weather. Snow, I don't think so. It's going to be a warm system. Cold air does follow behind it, though. But I'm telling you, a lot of weather coming up. So that's the kind of a breakdown of the storm system itself. Now let's kind of hyper-focus on the severe weather side of things. So this is the latest Storm Prediction Center outlook that was issued a few hours ago. And this is for Friday, and then we'll show you Saturday. I do think there'll be severe weather for Sunday, but they don't have an outlook issued for it. The confidence isn't there yet. So they have issued an enhanced risk in the orange area for day 5. A level 3 out of 5. I mean, it only goes up to 5 categories. So they're already up to level 3. And we're sitting here Monday morning, and this is for Friday, so several days out. Let's get some water here before we get going here. Sorry, guys. Just allergies kicking my butt. Been outside a lot lately, playing soccer, being soccer coach and all that. But so let's zoom into the orange area. This is an enhanced risk. I click it. It says 30% any severe risk. 30% risk of any severe weather. That could be tornadoes, damaging winds, hail. Now, as we get inside day 3, they separate those two risks, if you will, those 3 risks, tornadoes, damaging winds, hail. This far out, we still got a long ways to go before we get to that, okay? So we just know 30% risk of any severe weather. That's a pretty high risk of any severe weather within 25 miles in a given location. I mean, that includes Little Rock, up the Boot Hill, Missouri, all the way up to Poplar Bluff, Memphis, down to Oxford, Clarksdale, over to Jackson, Tennessee, very small section of western Kentucky, southern Illinois, and like I said, a good chunk of southeastern Missouri. So large area of Arkansas, 30% risk of any severe weather in that orange area. Now, in the yellow, that's a level 2 out of 5 risk, a slight risk of severe weather. And this is a 15% risk of any severe weather. Just to kind of zoom into a couple areas up here. I mean, this goes all the way up from southwestern areas of Wisconsin, good chunk of eastern Iowa. I mean, down to a large area of Illinois, covers a large area of Missouri. You know, I'll just kind of zoom in. St. Louis included into this, Evansville, over to Nashville, Tennessee, includes Florence, Alabama, all the way down to Jackson, all the way down to Alexandria. Louisiana includes Shreveport, over to Tyler, Texas, Longview. I mean, all the way, almost all the way to just north of Houston. And then it does include eastern areas of Oklahoma, Fort Smith, Fayetteville, all the way up to Springfield. So this is definitely a large geographical area that's covered in this risk area. So day 6, this is for Saturday. And listen, in my opinion, I think Saturday has a higher end potential. That's my opinion. It's just, are we going to get another low that develops somewhere into here? But it's the same general thing, guys. You know, if you look in the orange area, it's a 30% risk of any severe weather, tornadoes, damaging winds, or hail. There's going to be a tornado risk, and there's definitely going to be a damaging wind risk with this. Certainly going to be a hail risk, but we just got to fine tune all that as we get closer. Birmingham, up to just south of Huntsville and Florence. I mean, all the way back over to almost the the Georgia-Alabama line, but not quite. Down to Montgomery, down to Meridian, Hattiesburg, Jackson, Mississippi, all the way to a small section of Louisiana right here. 30% risk of any severe weather. And then in the yellow, which stretches all the way up to the Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky border, it does include Louisville and Maryville, but not quite up to Cincinnati. You have a 15% risk of any severe weather, basically a slight risk at day 6. Knoxville, you're including in this, Nashville, Lexington, Kentucky, not sure if I said that already, down to Atlanta, Chattanooga, Columbus, Mobile, Pensacola, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Vicksburg, Greenwood, Tupelo, 15% risk of any severe weather. Okay, so this is going to be a big day too. It's going to be a big day. Sunday, there's no area as of right now, but if I had to bet, I would say there's probably going to be a severe weather risk probably in these areas right into here. But, you know, not quite sure. Not quite sure. Could expand a little bit further west. So talking about the ingredients here, and I'll kind of just breeze through this. Well, first thing we'll talk about is kinematics, your wind energy needed for severe weather. Second thing will be thermodynamics, your cape level, storm energy, and surface moisture, things like that. So we'll look at the 500 millibar flow. These are winds at about 18,000 feet up in the air. And with this system that's moving in, this trough that's becoming more neutrally to almost negatively tilted, strong low pressure will develop in response. And we'll start to get this into, let's take it into, into Friday afternoon. If I put my cursor over there, that says 130 knots. So that's winds moving, that's winds moving in like over 50 miles per hour at about 18,000 feet up in the air. Very, very strong winds. So just think of that as a lot of wind energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere and a lot of wind energy in general. Of course, we're not getting 150 mile per hour winds at the surface, but there's a lot of wind energy in the atmosphere, okay? That's going to support and eventually mix the surface just at a fraction of that. So a lot of wind energy with this, okay? And if you look at the wind barbs here, they're pointing, they're pointing to the southwest. So winds are coming out the southwest, the south. So this is ripping in a lot of surface moisture, a lot of moist air from the south, out of Mexico, out of the Gulf, things like that. So a lot of wind energy. We'll talk about the surface moisture here in a second. And then all that wind energy overspreads the entire Mississippi Valley, points west and east. A lot of wind energy overspreads this area. This is yanking up to the north, evecting north a lot of surface moisture into this area. Now, as this kind of continues to move off that way, you see how everything's kind of circling around this area. That is our low. Moving across this region, okay, ejecting to the north as it gets stronger and gains latitude. And then we're getting into Saturday morning, a secondary area develops, and you can see it right here. Not as strong as the first, but you don't need it that strong to get severe weather. Remember that. This is Saturday afternoon. We got a flow at the mid to upper levels going at around 80, 90 knots. That's definitely enough wind energy, and this could actually increase, but we'll see how it goes here. But as we're getting into Sunday morning, a lot of wind energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere going over the eastern U.S. into Sunday midday. Now, you look at the lower levels, 850 millibars. This is what we call our low-level jets. Winds at about 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in the air, about a mile above our heads, the surface, depending on your elevation. So we're already waking up Friday morning to winds screaming out the south across the plains at interstate speed, about 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in the air. The low-level jets, when you walk outside on the morning of severe weather, expected maybe that later that afternoon, and you can actually see the clouds moving. That's your low-level jet, okay, if you're interested in that. But we keep this going, and we take it into, let's see if we can get this to move. Pivotal weather can be so finicky. We take it into Friday afternoon. This is a pretty large area of winds screaming out the south. You see this wind barb right here, right here. You see how the flag is pointing to the south. That means your flow is coming directly out of the south to the north. This entire corridor right in here is going just like that, okay? This is yanking up a lot of moisture out the Gulf all the way up into the Midwest. So this is going to create a corridor for thermodynamic ingredients for severe weather. But we're really talking about kinematics. So all this wind energy in the lower levels, in the mid to upper levels, you got the flow coming out the southwest. In the low levels, you got the flow coming out the south. So a little bit of turning with height, a little bit of directional shear, puts a little bit of a spin in the atmosphere. So not only are you going to have a lot of wind energy for damaging winds, but also a spin in the atmosphere for tornadoes. And then check it out. I mean, you get in the late Friday night, look at this low-level jet ramping over areas of the Midwest, getting into the Ohio Valley, areas of the Mid-South. I mean, your low-level jet's going in about 85, 90 miles per hour. This will certainly mix the surface in the form of 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gust and just a lot of wind energy. And then what we watch for is that secondary low pressure develops here in a secondary low-level jet forms down here in the Mid-South. And listen, you don't need a low-level jet at 65 to 80 knots. I mean, 30 to 40 knots will get the job done. 45, 55 mile per hour winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere. It's a lot of wind energy right in this area. And this will get the job done for severe weather Saturday afternoon, evening. And then this screams over the I-95 corridor. And this, for example, this is 18Z Sunday. So this is midday Sunday. It's a lot of wind energy moving over the eastern U.S. in the I-95 corridor. In the lower levels, and this will mix the surface in the form of very strong winds at where you're standing. So I think we'll get a big windstorm probably Sunday across the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, even areas of the Southeast. So that's all your wind energy. If you look at thermodynamic energy, surface moisture, stuff like that, I mean, already into Friday morning, you have ripe Gulf moisture down here just sitting along the Gulf coastline. So dew points in the 60s. It's very moist already. Once you start to get those dew points in the 60s, that supports severe weather really anywhere in the country. But as we're starting to get into Friday afternoon, Friday evening, we get this corridor of moisture that gets all the way, dew points that get all the way into the 50s, all the way up into the Midwest. Dew points in the 50s will get the job done for severe weather in the Midwest. A little bit of bump in elevation, the higher up you get, the less moisture at the surface that you need due to elevation. But down here, you really need deep moisture in the deep south, and you're going to have it. Dew points in the 60s, maybe even some low 70s in certain areas. This is a moist sector. Definitely a thermodynamic energy certainly will be there for severe weather. And this moist air will just kind of sit tight in the deep south. It's not going to go anywhere. Might get chopped in half in places from the west, but in general, it'll stay there. And then we get into Saturday, and we have this slither of moisture getting all the way up into Kentucky. Dew points in the 60s. That's plenty of moist air needed for for these severe storms. It'll be here. Moist air rises all the way into the northeast. And, I mean, we start to get into Saturday night and a Sunday morning. Certainly moist air will overspread across the southeast up into the mid-Atlantic. So certainly plenty of moist air to deal with that will be there for severe weather. And then the last thing you look at is the Cape levels. Explosive Cape, unfortunately, is trending with this storm system for Friday afternoon. I mean, we got Cape levels on the Euro mixed layer Cape over 2,500 joules per kilogram in eastern Texas, getting into Arkansas. So a lot of storm energy. Are you going to have the lift for thunderstorms down here because the low pressure is going to be so far up here? I think you will. And even though the Cape levels are only 500 to 1,000 joules per kilogram up here in like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, that is plenty of storm energy to get the job done because your kinematics are probably going to be even better up here. So you don't need explosive Cape to get severe weather. Remember that. But if you do have it, it could be a bad case scenario, if you will. So Saturday afternoon, it doesn't show a lot of storm energy in the picture, but I don't think you're going to need much. So I do think this area right here will unfortunately trend higher as far as storm energy. It doesn't show a lot right here right now, but we start to get into Sunday, and I do think we need to watch for a little severe weather along that I-95 corridor. For sure. So that's a breakdown of severe weather. At this range, all we can do is kind of cover those things. When we get closer, we can look at short-range model guidance. So there is going to be a snow side to this, guys. There's going to be a corridor of snow up here in areas of the Dakotas and probably northern Minnesota. This is the Euro Ensemble. In the Euro Ensemble, it does kind of cut it off for the western Dakotas. Who is going to get accumulating snow out of this? If you do, you're probably going to have a risk of a blizzard because of such a strong low pressure. They'll probably be hanging out here. But, in the eastern Dakotas, you do have a couple inch snowfall, mean footprint of snow, if you will. Northern Minnesota, a few to several inch snowfall average. And there is a little signal once you get a little bit deeper, further south in Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the UP. But I don't think this is going to be a super heavy snowfall event. But it could trend that way. The other system last week trended that way too. But a lot of snow out in the Rockies. We're going to get more snow in Wyoming. And could even get some accumulating snow in like Denver. So if we do look at, say, the GFS ensemble for this range, and it does show more snow for a more widespread area. We have over a half a foot snowfall mean in areas of Minnesota and North Dakota. And the footprint of snow is just more widespread and shows more in general. So what we do know is wherever it is snowing, it could be a blizzard. So if we look at winds in general for this entire event, like this is getting into the meat of the storm. One thing you'll notice, this is Friday afternoon. It could be snowing in this area. So, we're getting, and let's look at this. And let's bump it back to that. This is wind gusts. So if you look right here, we're getting wind gusts, 30, 40, 45, even 50 miles per hour in areas of the western Dakotas. But will it be snowing in these areas? So you only need, I think, that 3-hour period of 35 mile per hour winds consistently and snow for you guys to get blizzard warnings. I believe that's the criteria. But northern plains could get that, especially if the axis of moisture shifts into this area. Very strong wind event across the southern high plains and the southern plains. This is going to be damaging wind gusts, and you might not even get a drop of rain. Very dry air, wildfire danger will be there in this area. So Friday, big time wind event across western Texas, western Oklahoma, and New Mexico. And then this event will continue to overspread. And if we do switch to any snow Saturday morning up here, and there's still moisture in this area, this could be blizzard conditions. You see these 30, 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts. So, and then you move into the eastern U.S., and this is getting into Saturday morning. Look at these windy conditions across areas of the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, the Ohio Valley, and it could be a very windy day. What kind of weather are you getting? That's a big question, but the winds are going to be strong regardless in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, lower Michigan, Kentucky, as we're getting into Saturday midday regardless. 30, 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts are likely. And then if we get that low, which we likely will, that forms out of the Gulf and then ejects across areas of the eastern U.S., we're going to probably have a big-time wind event Saturday night and a Sunday morning across the southern Appalachian Mountains And then a big wind event across the eastern U.S., really the I-95 corridor points west and east of it, across just the eastern states, the eastern seaboard. Big wind event. This is Sunday, and we could have power outages, could have wind damage from this, even outside of whatever weather happens. But this is predicted rainfall based off the blend of all models between now and basically like the end of next week. So we're going to get a lot of rain probably from the system later this week into early this weekend, but I think we're going to have more storm systems to follow that we hadn't even talked about. But it's really highlighting this area right in here for a lot of rainfall, a few to several inches of rain as possible. Some of this is picking up on the rain that's falling right now with this Gulf low, but flooding is probably going to be a storyline that's not talked about as much right now, but it could materialize into a much bigger storyline. As far as the weather today, we do have this kind of low pressure just cruising over the southeast, and this is actually going to strengthen over the coming hours, but this is bringing heavy rain. It's definitely a rainy start to your day across areas of the deep south, Atlanta to Columbia, Charleston over to Wilmington. We got some probably some stronger storms down here in northern Florida, but we don't have enough ingredients getting pulled north for this to be really a significant severe weather event or anything like that. But the bridge is really built up, so the flow is mainly up here. This is kind of trapped under the ridge, but it's actually a very mild morning across most of the country. But that's weather right now. Watches, warnings, advisories, winter storm watches across areas of the Cascades. I'm sorry, the Sierra Nevada. We do have some special weather statements. One thing that you don't really see is let's pull it up right here. One thing you don't really see is all the red flag warnings ongoing right now. So let's look at this. For some reason, weather-wise, does not show wind alerts, but these are high wind warnings up here in areas of Dakotas and Montana, and these are red flag warnings. So don't burn anything up here. Fire danger will be there, and there will be some very strong winds, which I'll talk about here in a second. But as far as the risk of thunderstorms, we do have a marginal risk down here. Some of these storms could end up becoming strong to severe in areas of Florida this afternoon. So, maybe a brief tornado, some damaging winds possible. So be aware of this if you live in Florida. And then the risk of excessive rainfall, surprisingly, isn't really there today. I thought that maybe they would have a little bit more of a risk in these areas, but it's not there. So here's this Gulf low that'll continue to swing. You would think you're about done with the rain by about midday, and then the low kind of sort of re-strengthens, and it almost looks like a new low takes over, and then kind of just soaks areas of South Carolina and surrounding states. And then this will finally head on off, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, we're waking up to a better day of weather. But we're going to have to continue to deal with rain in this area for sure. Northeast, a little bit of snow this morning. This will head on off, and then we get into this evening, we get into the overnight hours, and it's a pretty quiet day of weather. South Central U.S., same thing. This afternoon, this evening, overnight hours, tomorrow morning, quiet weather. Nothing to really talk about. Now up here in the North Central U.S., with a strong low kind of cruising to your north up here in Canada, we're going to have strong winds south of this low, just like we do with any low. So a strong wind event is going to happen in the Dakotas. As far as weather, like as far as moisture, anything falling from the sky, I wouldn't expect much. But the wind event up here is going to be significant. Please be aware of this if you're in the Dakotas, especially North Dakota and areas of northern Montana. 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts are likely up in this area. So the winds are probably already kicking right now, so be aware of this. So conditions out west, quiet for now, but that'll change over the coming days. We will get some much needed moisture across Southern California as we are waking up tomorrow morning as a system begins to enter the picture. Temperatures, very mild day. You get this pocket of cooler air just because of the rain and clouds. But where it is not raining, I mean, it is a mild day. I mean, getting to some 70s and 80s across the middle of the country. There's a sharp temperature gradient up here in North Dakota and Montana, but it's a mild day across the west too. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a wonderful start to your week.